perhaps let's start off with an economist's view. How has this translated for the overall South African economy?
Well, we know that there's a loss being made, was made in the recent, or was released in press now, $50 million was being lost, or a loss of that. So in that sense, it was not a profitable endeavor. We know that there was a financial crisis. Tourism was a bit down. We know all what was going on around the world, and that affected most of the spend within the World Cup and the people arriving in South Africa, which has an impact then and now on the economy.
What's your view on that, Roshene? Have we had a lasting legacy from the Soccer World Cup? I know there was 1 million extra tourists last year, some of them coming from the World Cup. Are they coming back? Have we put our best face forward with the World Cup?
Well, if we look at our figures for January and February this year, we see 100,000 more tourists that came to South Africa than last year this time, and that represents an 8% increase. Now, that is unprecedented at a time when we do have a global financial crisis. So we still think we are riding the wave of the success of that World Cup, which led to a lot of brand positivity and interest in visiting South Africa.
Riding the wave right now, how long could it be expected to last? Because surely we're going to be needing continual marketing initiatives to enhance that South African brand so that it does stay fresh in the tourist mind.
Oh, certainly. We're not sitting back on our laurels. Our marketing work has continued. We are out there on all the global platforms, and we are marketing South Africa quite aggressively. We know that the issue still is the length of stay and the spend that people have in South Africa, and that's what we've got to work on. We've got to make our destination great value. We've got to add value to what people do when they come here, get them to spend more money, make sure that they come here and not only have a great tourism experience and a holiday, but they also come for business and they come for our events.
Well, Freddie, we can talk about the cost of hosting the World Cup a little bit later, but perhaps looking at what it's done for South Africa, and the government would have us believe that it added 0.5 percentage point to GDP last year, that an extra 70 billion rand flowed into the economy. Are those the sort of numbers that you see in, I mean, have we raised the base for South Africa with the World Cup?
Well, I would certainly say we raised the base, but the question is it sustainable in the long term, or long to medium term, or medium to long term? We know that there's a lot of positive, there's a lot of more tourists coming into South Africa, but the question remains the cost that we've incurred hosting the World Cup and the auxiliary infrastructure, everything, was it worth it? And are there policies in place to sustain that type of platform we set ourselves on?
Has the bar been raised too high?
Well, a big initiative that we've taken this year is obviously we understand that SADC land tourists are the main tourists that come to South Africa, both in terms of volume and in terms of revenue to the economy. We are about to set up an office in Nigeria because we're seeing that Nigerians are flowing into this country. There was a 30% increase between Jan and February. These are people that are high spenders. These are people that we've got to gear up for. So the tourism industry has to be ready to make sure that we give the kind of experience that people from Africa are looking for. We're also seeing great growth out of Brazil and out of the US. And these are markets that we must be ready for. We must not only rely on our traditional markets out of Europe, which continue to give us the numbers, but it's about looking further than that. And it's about how creative and innovative can we be so that we take advantage of what the World Cup has offered to us as a country.
Roshene, let me get your view on the infrastructure spend, because yes, it was big. Some of it wasn't specifically for the World Cup, so the Gautrain, but this infrastructure is in place. Is this going to help our tourism going forward, having stadia around the country, having the Gautrain and all the other infrastructure that was put in place for the World Cup?
Certainly, the tourism industry alone put in about 20 billion rand over and above government's investment in infrastructure, and that has led to a greater supply, better class of accommodation, as well as attractions. Supply is something that you've got to see in the long term. I mean, we don't expect that all those hotels are going to be full just a few months after the World Cup. It will take maybe 5 years for us to really see the benefits of this, and we've got to take that kind of view.
Of course, where we've seen this investment being made in infrastructure and, you know, Roshene highlighting some of the benefits of that infrastructure coming into place, we still sit with a very dire situation where we have inadequate infrastructure, for example, supporting the mining sector and industry. Should attention have been shifted far away from those resources and focused on where it was?
Well, it's difficult to say. We know that the World Cup gave us, or the government, the impetus to spend on auxiliary infrastructure, which was crucially needed for further investment in the country. Yes, that was true, but if you look at investment elsewhere in the economy, now that we've, say, implemented all the auxiliary infrastructure around the Gauteng, we need infrastructure, say, in more rural parts of the country to get investment going and leave it on a sustainable basis. Yes, it was good. We saw investment, but we need to continue with the investment. It can't just stop after the World Cup and then there's no investment further.
Freddie, how about jobs? Because 130,000 jobs were said to have been created during the World Cup, and I'm sure most of those, if not all of those, were temporary jobs. In fact, we've seen the unemployment rate ticking up since the World Cup, still back up at 25%. How can we actually use the tourism industry, in your view, to create more jobs at this stage where we need them?
Well, it's good if there's more tourists coming into South Africa, but the thing is, we need to implement policies that's sustainable for investment, other than just tourism investment. We need sustainable investment in South Africa. Say, for instance, in the manufacturing industry, we know that the numbers are down. We know global markets are a bit down. We know there's debt concerns. There's Europe, the US growth concerns. So that's affecting manufacturing. But if this is sorted out, are we placed on the right place to facilitate growth through our manufacturing and our other industries other than tourism? That's the question that needs to be answered, and we have to look at that type of investments.
Roshene, just within that, the tourism space specifically, I mean, the big debate that's being had is the kind of benefit it has actually had on jobs. Yes, we talk about jobs having increased over that World Cup period, but emphasis placed on the fact that it is temporary jobs to a large extent that had been created. How do we extend that further, making it a more permanent situation, because it has to be a solution that's more sustainable than over just one sporting event?
Well, by its very nature, tourism is seasonal. Hence, we do find that it is difficult to maintain the jobs that do get created during the high season period. But what we are seeing is that the jobs we've seen being created are with the small businesses. And it's in the small businesses, like people that are part of our emerging tourism entrepreneurs, where they've created between 200 to 2,000 jobs just in the period over the World Cup, which they have managed to keep. And part of that is really to look at how we can ensure those small businesses continue to be in business. And that's about demand. So our job from a marketing point of view is stimulating the demand, ensuring that we keep that demand fairly high, working with the trade in markets, not just in South Africa, to offer the value for money packages that will attract more people to the country.
Freddie, to what extent do you think South Africa being in the spotlight very much last year helped to preempt and perhaps even trigger deals like Walmart coming to our shores? Because that followed shortly afterwards. We were also invited to join the BRICS group of nations. Do you think that was helped by the World Cup?
Well, I would say, I would presume it helped. And what we need to keep in mind is we need to keep in mind that we can't really afford bad publicity in the national arena at this stage. We can't have, to put it blunt, politicians making wild statements about mining and so on and that type of things, because you spend millions and millions of rands of hosting and presenting South Africa to the rest of the world. This must be followed on by, say, prudent international marketing and not being shot down by, say, irresponsible comments in the media.
Roshene, your view on that? Do you think that we are doing damage to ourselves at the same time as trying to draw more tourists and more investment to South Africa?
I'm actually very excited at the moment because we have great partnerships with the Department of Sports as well as with arts and culture. So we are looking at how we can have a more event type strategy so that we build on the lifestyle and sporting events to attract more people here. You know that we have the Joy of Jazz coming up in August. We have the Africa Fashion Week happening. We have the World Golf Championships next year. These are all fantastic initiatives. We're also working on a convention bureau strategy where we're going to work with all the cities to attract more meetings to this country. And we know up to 2015 we've already got about 300 meetings that are set for the country, bringing in large numbers of delegates. If you look at COP17, which takes place later this year, there should be about 20,000 people that will be descending on Durban. And these are all fantastic and great initiatives within government. We just need to do more.